Hello, everyone. This is part 2 of the Hamburg Cell interview on the Roads to 9/11 series with Adam Fitzgerald. Adam continues the story of the terrorists who went from Hamburg to Florida. And this episode kind of concludes the series, although I'll be doing stuff with Adam over on his new channel, The Darkened Hour, and you can check out the links to that below. We'll just go into more detail on some of these things. And some of the more general ones I'll post on my own, but if you're into the real detail of it, check that out too. Okay, so here's Adam actually starting over on the West Coast as he's wrapping up some of the Saudi involvement and sponsorship of the terrorists there.
Well, I'll start out west first, and that's Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hamdi. These are the first future hijackers to enter the United States, all under the watchful eyes of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Saudi General Directorate, and the Israeli Mossad. While the Saudi intelligence operatives follow al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi, the Israeli Mossad will monitor the Hamburg Cell on the East Coast. Al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi are closely guarded by two Saudi nationals who immediately begin the funding process, with Omar al-Bayoumi meeting both men at the LAX airport inside a restaurant. He offers these men a rental home in San Diego. He also gives them money, helps them rent a car, rent an apartment. Meanwhile, other Saudi nationals will also help them get driver's licenses and food. The Saudi national's name is Osama Basnan. Back in 1993, Osama Basnan holds a house party for the infamous Omar Abdel Rahman, who's the blind sheikh. The FBI knew about that meeting, and while they monitored the party, they also found out that Basnan had a guest visa, which long ago expired back in 1980, but they failed to act on this, even though they know it's an expired visa for that long.
Okay, and these Saudis, Basnan, are they random Saudis, religious fanatical Saudis, or are they connected to the Saudi state, the Saudi intelligence in any way?
Well, they're radicals in their own right. I mean, Osama Basnan is known to praise Osama bin Laden, the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Omar al-Bayoumi is a little bit more moderate, but they both have, according to the Joint House Inquiry in the 28 pages, it shows that both men were directly linked with the Saudi Intelligence General Intelligence Directorate. And so they have strong links to not only to the government, but also with Osama Basnan to numerous terrorist organizations as well inside the Saudi government, inside the Saudi kingdom. Now, however, a report will come out after 9/11 attacks that Basnan is working for Saudi government, but the reports of the details, of the finer details regarding Basnan are classified. So there's that with Basnan. And Omar Bayoumi, when they interviewed him, the entire report is redacted because the 9/11 Commission actually went to the Saudi kingdom and interviewed both Basnan and Bayoumi, but both of those reports, you can't read anything. So,
was there an officially stated reason why the reports were redacted?
Well, sure, because they have contacts within the United States. Omar al-Bayoumi himself has a company that's in Colorado, and when they arrested Abu Zubaydah, the FBI did, and when they captured him, on his possession, they found business cards directly linking to one Omar al-Bayoumi and his phone number on the card. So whether that Omar al-Bayoumi and Basnan has incriminating reports, you could read into 28 pages, even though that's redacted but not fully. You can get a summarization that these people were inside the United States dealing with businesses in Colorado while conducting clandestine operations, spying on the United States, as well as funding, these Al-Qaeda operatives inside the United States. So what they probably said in those redacted reports probably had to do with Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, for sure.
Okay, so this is the 28 pages, and the idea that the Saudi state was some way involved with 9/11 in either sponsoring it or had a connection with the hijackers. And there was financial transfers going on, right, between...
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'll get into that in a bit.
Okay.
But, yeah, for sure, the funding itself came indirectly from all the way up to the U.S. ambassador to the United States, Saudi U.S. ambassador, Bandar bin Sultan. So I'll get into that in a bit. Getting back to how Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar, Al-Hazmi, while he's inside the United States, gets a job with Khalid al-Mihdhar, working for Sam's Start Mart, which is a gas station located in La Mesa, San Diego. And Al-Hazmi and Mihdhar were both hired by the owner of the station. His name was Osama Mahmoud Mustafa, nicknamed Sam by the people who frequent the store. Mustafa also espoused anti-American rhetoric from time to time, and a lot of people noticed this about him. Meanwhile, the Hamburg Cell prepares their journey into the United States, prepared by their Syrian contacts of Mohammed Hayden Zamar and Mark Moon Darkened. After their meeting with bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in Afghanistan, Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi report their passports missing. Ziad Jarrah reports his missing in February of 2000. Now, this is most likely to clear their tracks after they visit Afghanistan, so international agents wouldn't be suspicious of them. And Marwan al-Shehi was the first of the Hamburg group to leave for the United States. He arrives in Newark, New Jersey on May 29th, 2000. The second to arrive is Mohammed Atta, who applies for a U.S. visa, in which he receives it the very next day. He travels by bus on June 2nd from Hamburg to Prague, and he stays there overnight before traveling to the United States the very next day. Ziad Jarrah, on May 25th of 2000, applies for and receives his 5-year visa, 5-year U.S. business visa. And on June 27th of 2000, he enters Newark International. Jarrah is the only hijacker who enters the United States multiple times. 7 times he'll come in and out of the United States, and he leaves the U.S. while returning at different times throughout the year 2000 and 2001. Jarrah enrolls right away at the Florida Flight Training Center in Venice, Florida. He enrolls in flight schools for 6 months, and from June 2000 to January 15th of 2001, Atta and Marwan al-Shehi began taking flight lessons at multiple schools, logging in hundreds of hours of flight training, flight schools such as Opa-locka in Florida and Huffman Aviation. All 3 men would also get driver's licenses in their names in Florida. And in October of 2000, Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi would return to Huffman a second time, and by November of 2000, Atta would earn his commercial pilot's license, and Marwan al-Shehi reserves his in December of 2000. Both men in December would also enroll at Eagle International to continue their flight training in large jets. They would also enroll at Opa-locka and train in simulator jets, and both would purchase flight deck videos for Boeing 747s. Hani Hanjour enters the United States in December of 2000, and he stays in San Diego for a brief period. And already Al-Hazmi and Al-Mihdhar are attending a San Diego flight school in May of 2000 called Montgomery Field. But they were so poor that instructor Rick Garza fails them. And on top of that, they spoke terrible English, while Al-Mihdhar spoke none at all. Hanjour would log in the most hours as a pilot out of all the 9/11 hijackers, and he was inside the United States in as early as 1992. He went to the University of Arizona. I just talked about that in our previous Hamburg Cell video. And here Hanjour would enroll at English language courses and also file for another U.S. visa. His first visa was a student visa, a B visa it's called, approved by the Saudi consulate in Jeddah, which was the same consulate which was headed by J. Michael Springman. Now, J. Michael Springman infamously suspends 11 applications regarding, most of them regarding the future 9/11 hijackers, because a lot of these applications were incomplete, and he suspended them, but he was overridden by his superiors. And I forgot the name of the woman who actually who overrid him, and she was linked to I think to the Central Intelligence Agency, but that's speculation, so take with a grain of salt. But a lot of these applications were approved. In fact, all of them were, and a lot of them were 9/11 hijackers. So, but Ada and Al-Shee were rented an apartment in Florida, and one place they stayed at was in Hollywood, Florida. And 1 block away from where they lived was an apartment rented by Israeli Mossad agents posing as art students. Meanwhile, Ramzi bin Shabib tried to enter the United States to meet with the Hamburg Cell operatives because he wanted to be part of the operation, but he was denied entry from a consular agent in Germany. On his application, the agent also noted that Al-Shib, Ramzi bin Al-Shib, had no income and he had no education. And meanwhile, he's traveling back and forth to the Middle East, most notably Afghanistan. So his application was denied. I'm going to break down the rest of the 9/11 hijacker team who had entered the United States at different times. So here they are. Ahmed Al-Ghamdi enters the United States in September of 2000. He receives his 2-year tourist visa from the Saudi consulate in Jeddah, Springman's office. If you hear a Saudi Jeddah office, that's the Springman's office. He was not interviewed. His application was incomplete. Hamza Al-Ghamdi enters the United States October of 2000, receives his 2-year tourist visa from the Jeddah consulate office. He had no visa problems. However, his application was incomplete. He was not interviewed. Mohand Al-Sherhi enters the United States in October of 2000, receives his 2-year tourist visa from the Jeddah consulate's office. His application was incomplete. He was not interviewed. Ahmed Al-Nami enters the United States in October of 2000, receives his 2-year visa from the Jeddah consulate's office. His application was incomplete. He was not interviewed. Walid Al-Sherri and Wael Al-Sherri both received their visas. However, the Sherri brothers had a relative in the Saudi passport office who provided them with new passports and after their return from Afghanistan. Ahmed Al-Haznawi enters the United States in November of 2000. He receives his 2-year tourist visa from the Jeddah office. His application was complete, but he was not interviewed. Majid Makid enters the United States in November of 2000, receives his 2-year tourist visa from Jeddah. His application was incomplete. He was not interviewed. Satam Al-Saskami enters the United States in November of 2000, receives his 2-year tourist visa from the Riyadh consulate's office. He was given an interview, and he also completed his application. He told the consulate agent he was a businessman. Saeed Al-Ghamdi, he entered the United States in June of 2001. He received his 2-year visa from the Jeddah consulate's office. He was not interviewed. His application was incomplete. Abdul Aziz Al-Omari enters the United States in June of 2001, receives his 2-year visa from the Jeddah office. His passport had travel stamps that was known to be associated with Al-Qaeda. However, he was not interviewed. His application was incomplete, and his application was approved through the Visa Express program. It was a U.S. Visa Express program. Fayez Bani Hamid. June of 2001, he enters the United States, receives his tourist visa from an Abu Dhabi, UAE consulate's office. His application was incomplete, but Bani Hamad was a former immigration officer himself and was not given an interview because of this. Salim Al-Hazmi, June of 2001, he enters the United States, receives a 2-year tourist visa from the Jeddah office. His application was incomplete, and his application was passed through the visa program. He was interviewed. Finally, in July of 2001, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed obtains a business visa into the United States. In the Saudi, he used the alias Abdul Rahman Al-Ghamdi and receives his passport from the Riyadh consular office. However, there is no evidence that he uses his passport to enter the United States. Most of the hijackers would obtain Florida driver's licenses as well as Virginia driver's licenses. 14 of the 19 hijackers obtained new passports shortly before they applied for their U.S. visas. 3 of the hijackers, Khalid al-Midar, Nawaf al-Hamzi, and Salim al-Hazmi, presented their visa applications, passports. They contained an indicator of possible terrorist affiliations. 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi nationals. All 19 of the still existing hijack applications were incomplete in some way, with a data field left blank or not answered fully, while only 2 of them were interviewed. 8 of the 8 other conspirators in the plot attempted to acquire U.S. visas during the course of the plot. 3 of them succeeded. Of the 5 conspirators who failed to obtain visas were the following: Tawfiq bin Atash, nicknamed Khalad; Ramzi bin al-Shib; Saeed al-Ghamdi, not the same hijacker; Zakari Esabar, and Ali Abdul Aziz Ali. 4 of these people are currently awaiting trial at the Guantanamo. I'm sorry, 3 of them, which is Tawfiq bin Atash, Ramzi bin Shabib, and Ali Abdul Aziz Ali are awaiting trial in Guantanamo Bay. In June of 2001, Marwan al-Shehi, Ziad Jarrah, and Muhammad Atta all traveled to Spain to meet with Ramzi bin al-Shib. And Atta had complained to bin al-Shib about his difficulty in getting through to Jarrah, about his fears, and, because they feared that Jarrah might withdraw from the plot completely. He was complaining that he misses his girlfriend. It was here that Jarrah would travel to Germany and meet with his girlfriend, Aizol Senguin, for the last time. He would meet with Ramzi bin al-Shib at a later meeting, and it was here that bin al-Shib convinces Jarrah to go through with the operation. Jarrah arrives back inside the United States on August 5th of 2001. Senguin said that she visited Jarrah in the U.S. at an earlier date, and he flew her to Key West in a small plane. She was also with him when he rented a Boeing flight simulator in Miami in early 2001. Jarrah had urged her not to tell anyone he was in the United States. Meanwhile, Atta had approved the Senguin visit to meet with Jarrah because Jarrah had become withdrawn and morose in his attitude. Meanwhile, Al-Hazmi and Al-Midar relocates numerous times out west and before finally moving east coast. They began leaving from San Diego to Mesa, Arizona, Virginia, and finally relocating to Washington, D.C. Anwar al-Awlaki, meanwhile, infamous Yemeni preacher, imam, meanwhile had served as an imam to the Dar al-Jahar Mosque in Washington, D.C., where all 3 of the 9/11 hijackers, Al-Midar, Al-Hazmi, and Hani Anjour, who once frequently visited San Diego, began visiting his mosque there. In June of 2001, Al-Hazmi was involved in a minor traffic accident, and police came to Al-Hazmi's calls and filed a complaint and accident report. Meanwhile, Al-Hazmi moves in with Hani Anjour into an apartment in Paterson, New Jersey, and they go and frequent a video store. And there is a point I'll make real quick regarding a speculative point made by Wayne Madsen in his book, The Star and the Sword. Supposedly, in this video store in Paterson, New Jersey, a couple of the 9/11 hijackers, preferably Hani Anjour, Al-Hazmi, and Al-Midar, meet with, quote-unquote, Mossad operatives within urban moving systems, end quote. Supposedly, there's video evidence of this that was collected by the FBI. I would tell you to take that information with a grain of salt because it comes from Wayne Madsen, who many people consider a fringe conspiracy theorist. Although I think a couple of instances in the book of The Star and the Sword is pretty good because a couple of things are referenced. Now, a lot of that is referenced to his website, although not everything. So what I say to you, the listener or the viewer, is to take that information with a grain of salt. Muhammad Atta, meanwhile, was living in the same city but at another location in Paterson, New Jersey. And on August 4th, Muhammad Atta arrives at Orlando International to meet with a suspected 20th hijacker, Muhammad al-Qahtani, who arrived from Dubai. However, he was denied entry. He was detained as well. Meanwhile, another possible hijacker, Zacharias Moussaoui, had already been living inside the United States in Minnesota, where he was arrested by the FBI in August of 2001 on immigration charges. Moussaoui tried to take courses at Airman Flight School in Norman, Oklahoma, and despite 57 hours of flying lessons, he failed and left without ever having flown solo. The school was also visited by Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi in 2000. Moussaoui then relocates to another city in Minnesota and enrolls at Pan Am International and Flight Academy at Eagan, Minnesota. It was here that he received a $4,000 wire transfer from Ramzi bin al-Shib. And Clarence Prevost, the flight instructor assigned to Moussaoui, had begun arousing suspicions, especially with Moussaoui, especially when he began writing emails asking how to fly the plane but not landing it. Prevost then called the FBI, who then began monitoring Moussaoui. Materials itemized when he was arrested by the FBI, including a laptop computer, 2 knives, flight manuals pertaining to a Boeing 747 aircraft, a flight simulator computer program, fighting gloves and shin guards, and a computer disk with information about crop dusting. There was also a rumor that Mohammed Atta traveled to Oklahoma to try and rent crop dusting planes. This was proven by a woman, forgive me for forgetting her name, who went on, I think, ABC News and said that, yes, he met a person that resembled Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi, who tried to rent crop dusting planes. FBI agent Colleen Rowley also made repeated requests for permission to search Moussaoui's personal laptops and his room. However, the multiple requests was denied by her superior, who was Deputy General Counsel Marion Spike Bowman, who also later rejected previous statements and previous documents made by other agents based upon FISA regulations. And on August 27th, August 27, 2001, Ziad Jarrah checks into a Laurel, Maryland motel only a mile away from the Valencia hotel where other 4 hijackers are staying. He never stays with the hijackers, he stays alone. Just days before the operation, the group would begin moving into the cities in which their boarding passes were bought for the final phases of the hijacking operations. On September 10th of 2001, Atta picked up Al-Amari from the Milner Hotel in Boston, Massachusetts, and the two drive to their rented Nissan Altima car to a Comfort Inn in South Portland, Maine. On the way, they were seen getting gasoline at an Exxon gas station. And on September 10th of 2001, Hadi Anjour, Khalid Al-Mihdhar, and Nawaf Al-Hamzi check into the Marriott Residence Inn in Herndon, Virginia, where a prominent Saudi government official was also staying in a separate room. His name was Salah ibn Abdul Rahman Hussein. He is known in the United States as a prominent government official. He knows a lot of high-ranking U.S. government officials in both the Democrat and Republican Party. On September 7th of 2001, all 4 of the Flight 93 hijackers flew from Fort Lauderdale to Newark International Airport, where Jarrah would rent a separate hotel, like I said, at the day's room in Newark, while the others would rent room and stay together in the same hotel, but Jarrah stayed in a separate hotel room. He never stays with the hijackers anywhere, even in Germany, even in the United States. And he only meets with Atta and never meets with the other hijackers at all. The others would rent rooms and stay together. On September 9th of 2001, Al-Hazmi and Al-Mihdhar drop off a bag at the Iowa Dawa Mosque they frequented in Laurel, Maryland. The bag would contain pilot logbooks and receipts and other evidence documenting their brief flight training that they received, even though they failed miserably, in San Diego in early 2000. The FBI later retrieves this bag during the Pent Bomb investigation after 9/11 attacks. The reason for this is we don't know, basically, but as you can see that a couple of these hijackers leave incriminating evidence almost to lead a trail of look in this direction instead of other directions. So the FBI then begins a dragnet investigation as the CIA liaison office chiefs finally tell the FBI on August 21st of 2001 that two men, Al-Midar and Al-Hazmi, were inside the United States during a principals meeting where counterterrorism chief Richard Clark holds. But the information is so vague that the FBI goes into San Diego and New York trying to find these individuals, and they don't know where they're looking at. The report is vague and doesn't mention that both Al-Qaeda operatives were long gone from San Diego, and doesn't mention either by their full name. Meanwhile, Atta and Al-Amari would travel to Portland the night before the attacks. Now, the 9/11 Commission states that this was to ward off suspicion about too many Arab males boarding planes at Logan Airport. However, this reason would be quite faulty due to the fact that they just about almost missed boarding American Airlines 11 by minutes. There is something more to this event, I believe. Now, this is just what I'm speculating here, but I believe that the reason why they were doing this is so that they are meeting with other operatives, because there's clear evidence that more planes were to be involved in this hijacking operation. And I can get into that in a little bit. In fact, I will get into it more detail in our future podcast, which me and Richard will describe after I'm done here. But there was more planes that would be hijacked. And who they were meeting at this time is unknown. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will. That's my speculation. Jarrah, on September 10th, writes a final letter to his girlfriend, Hazel Seguin. In it, he makes vague declarations about meeting her for a future date at a different time, and how the operations will be celebrated. However, Jarrah would write the wrong address. Now, I find this to be very suspicious, because if you're writing a letter to your girlfriend, the final letter to the person that you love, you're going to get everything right. But he writes the wrong address. Meanwhile,
I'm just curious to know, was it the house he shared with her back in Hamburg?
yes, it was. In fact,
he got he got his own address wrong, essentially.
Right. But I'm sorry. It was the. No. That's incorrect. Let me correct that. It was a house that Seguin lived in separately. So
Okay.
She lived in a separate apartment, but he visited this apartment frequently, numerous times. So you would think that he knows the apartment address. And on my Facebook account, I went to great detail about this story as itself. If you want to visit my Facebook account, Adam Fitzgerald, I go into this in more detail. But meanwhile, the letter was intercepted, because the letter went back to the place of where Ziad Jarrah was staying in his hotel, but it was intercepted by the FBI after the 9/11 attacks, the day after. During the late evening, the FBI had begun a rushed investigation into Al-Hazmi and Al-Midar. FBI agent Robert Fuller, who begins looking for Nawaf Al-Hazmi and Khalid Al-Midar, that Al-Midar did not stay at the New York City hotel he listed in his application for his visa as a destination when he arrives in the U.S. in July of 2001. Meanwhile, Al-Hazmi and Al-Midar, who traveled to Los Angeles on January 15th of 2000, had immigration records indicating that they claimed to be destined for the Sheraton Hotel in Los Angeles. Fuller drafts an investigation lead for the Los Angeles FBI office, asking that the office to search the Sheraton Hotel concerning any stays by Al-Midar and Al-Hazmi in early 2000. But the search turns up nothing, because neither of them stayed at the Sheraton Hotel. So it was a dead end, and the FBI really were looking for ghosts at that point. September 11th, 2001. Muhammad Atta and Abdul Aziz Al-Amari board Colgan Air 5930 from Portland International. Atta checks in 2 bags. The flight from Portland departed on time and arrives Boston Logan at 6:45 a.m. Atta and Al-Amari would have a very tight schedule now, because they chose a connecting flight to American Airlines Flight 11. Michael Tuohy, a U.S. Airways ticket agent, told both men that they would have to check in again before boarding the flight out of Boston. Atta's bags, his 2 bags, would never make the connecting flight. Walid al-Shari, Wael al-Shari, Satam al-Sakami, arrived at Logan Airport at 6:45 a.m. Hamza Al-Ghamdi, Ahmed Al-Ghamdi, Fayez bin Hamad, Mohand Al-Sheri, and Marwan Al-Sheri would board United Airlines Flight 175 between the times of 7:23 and 7:28 a.m. Hani Anjur, Nawaf Al-Hazmi, Khalid Al-Midar, Majid Makid, and Salim Al-Hazmi all board American Airlines Flight 77, and a suspected sixth hijacker, which Nelson Martins details in his documentary 6 on 77. Flight 77 leaves the gate on time and took off from a runway 30 at Dulles Airport at 8:20 a.m. They're in direct contact with Indianapolis Air Traffic Controller. Saeed Al-Ghamdi, Ahmed Al-Nami, Ahmed Al-Haznawi all board United Airlines Flight 93 approximately at 7:39 a.m. However, Ziad Jarrah, the pilot for Flight 93, calls his girlfriend, Azel Sanguine, from a public telephone at the airport terminal, repeating his words, "I love you," over and over. However, this is contradicted from the FBI suggesting that in the 9/11 report that it is unknown to this day whether Ziad Jarrah calls Sanguine from the Newark Airport terminal or at the Days Inn Hotel. There are no cameras at Newark Airport, but there is CCT camera at Dulles Airport showing all the hijackers going through security screening. The video. Okay, you wanted to ask a question?
Well, yeah, a couple of things there. How can they not know what phone he called from? Because phones leave a paper trail.
Right.
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 So I don't understand that. And could you just comment on the idea of there not being security cameras at an airport? Because, I'm trying to think back to traveling through British airports around the year 2000. Okay. And I know places like Belfast, I had a friend of mine used to work in security there, and he took him into the room and he said there was nowhere in the airport which didn't have a security camera. He was just amazed at the coverage they got. I know it was Belfast, which is like a terrorist hotspot. Okay. But the idea of an airport not having security cameras is something that a lot of people have said, well, that's not credible. That's incredulous. What are your thoughts on that? The two things there, really. The phone call, how could they not know where it was from? And is it credible that airports have no security cameras?
Well, all right, to go to the first point, the FBI actually knows, and they told the 9/11 Commission, but there's a lot of controversy surrounding Ziad Jarrah. If you want, I could go into detail about that.
Well, whenever you want to, because I guess you're going to mention Ziad Jarrah a bit because of his family connections. I won't give the game away. I'll let you tell the story. But so either you can talk about that now, or just say come back to it in a minute and mention the phone call then if it fits the narrative better.
I could go back to. Can we hold that off regarding the conspiracy regarding Ziad Jarrah? I will get into that after I'm done here, but can we say that for like a question and answer for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. As for the CCT cameras, now Motley Rice, which is a law firm in Chicago, which is representing the 9/11 victims' families, and there's a lot of families involved. There's I think approximately 30. Don't hold me to the number on that, but there's a lot of families involved with this law firm. They put in the request and Freedom of Information request regarding all the security cameras from Newark, from Logan, and at Dulles, and they received the video camera regarding the security screening only at Dulles, because Logan and Newark International doesn't have cameras at security screening. They do have cameras elsewhere within the airport. Now, I don't know for a fact whether they requested that specific video or that was involved in the FOA request regarding the videos for all 3 airports. I myself have video which very few people probably in the United States have, and it was given to me by Nelson Martins, who got it from a third party. And of course, everybody sees the Dulles video where you see the 3 minute, I think it's 3 minutes or 5 minutes long, where you see people going through screening. You see Khalid al-Mihdhar and the hijackers coming through, and there's a lot of controversy saying, oh, there's no timestamp, right? There's no timestamp. Now, I have in my possession other areas of Dulles Airport in my possession. I'm not allowed to give it out, although Nelson Martins has made it public on his page, his Facebook page, in certain forums. I'm going to ask him whether I can make those videos public, and I will, and for other people to see. It's videos showing people coming into the airport on the day and the day prior. Also, videos of like certain areas within the airport, and they show really basically, really nothing, nothing incriminating anyway. The only video that really counts is the security screening video, and there's a lot of controversy behind that. But as for Newark and Logan, I will be honest as I can. I mean, why wouldn't I? I mean, I would like to see video of the videos of Logan and Newark myself if it's available. Why not? But there is none up to this point. I'm going to make it probably a point of mine to get those videos in a future date of when I make my own Freedom of Information request. So hopefully that answers your question. There is no video of Newark and
okay.
Now, even though that there's no cameras at Newark or no CCTV video, the only video showing is the Dulles video showing the hijackers going through screening. The video was, like I said, was released by Motley Rice, who represents the families. Now, of course, this is a point of contention for a lot of people saying there's no timestamp and that the video could be shot any day. Now, I'm going to dispel this rumor because the reason why there's no timestamp is when the FBI scrubbed the timestamp so they could see the video in full and see who's going through. Because at the bottom, you see the timestamp, the time, and block certain faces. Now, in the video, you'll see a victim from American Airlines Flight 77. Her name is Marie Ray Sopper. She's going through security screening. She's wearing a white shirt, I think a blue blouse, and she has her cat in a red cargo container. And she actually, if you see the video, she's at the metal screening, the metal detector, and she's holding the cat on her shoulder, on her chest, and she's told to put it in the red cargo container, and that's going through the metal detector on the separate issue on the belt. And it's red, it's bright red, you can see it, and at the end of the video where the timestamp would be, it's scrubbed up and you can see her going through that area, and that leads right to the tarmac and to the plane. Right behind her is Khalid al-Mihdhar and Majid Makid. Khalid al-Mihdhar is wearing a yellow shirt, and I think Majid Makid's wearing dark blue. I don't hold me to it. He was wearing, I forget. But that's, the video is authentic. And, Marie Ray Sopper, her mother, Marion Kiminek, is a friend of mine on Facebook, and I've spoken with her, and she says, yes, that's my daughter. And she gave an interview with, I think, either C-SPAN or CNN at one point. And
right.
Yeah, the video is authentic, just to get that out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the 9/11 Commission estimated that the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 11 begins at 8:14 a.m. Mohammed Atta is believed to be the pilot, and there are 2 audio declarations which were meant for the passengers, but instead they were heard by Boston Air Traffic Controlling, and they were made by Mohammed Atta. Now, Betty Ong and Madeline Amy Sweeney, both airline stewardesses, made aerophone calls. They were the only 2 calls that were made. Ong states that a passenger in 9B turned out to be Daniel Lewin, who, by the way, is an Israeli special operations soldier for the Sayeret Matkal, a terrorist special ops group. He was killed. Now, a formal draft was made by American Airlines that claims Daniel Lewin was shot and killed by the hijacker located right behind him in seat 10B, who was Satam al-Saskani.
Did you say shot?
Yeah, he was shot. The draft states that he was shot. However, the report was denied by the FAA administrator, Jane Garvey, who claimed that the person who did the report, it was his first day on the job and no gun was ever reported. In the report, it is quoted, quote, "The American Airlines FAA Principal Security Inspector was notified by Suzanne Clark of American Airlines corporate headquarters that an onboard flight attendant contacted American Airlines Operations Center and informed that a passenger located in seat 10B shot and killed a passenger in seat 9B at 9:20 a.m." End quote. The only person who can make that declaration would be Betty Ong. And a lot of people like to say that these phone calls they never were made, and that, and, you know, a lot of people within the truth movement like to dismiss these claims. Betty Ong's phone call, the audio itself or the transcript itself can only be heard in 5 minutes or 10 minutes long, but it's much longer than that, and it's not heard by the public. There's an extra like 7 minutes. I'm guessing that in that 7 minutes, or don't hold me to the time, but in that audio, which is not heard by the public, that's what she's informing the FAA about. And the 9/11 Commission doesn't even acknowledge this report and claims Lewin was stabbed from behind. Now, the 9/11 Commission estimates that Flight 175 was hijacked between 8:42 and 8:46 a.m. Marwan al-Shehi is believed to be the pilot. Flight attendant Robin Fangman, as well as two passengers, Peter Hansen and Brian David Sweeney, made air phone calls. Air phone calls are made to, they're actually phones that can make calls directly to the ground due to the plane's own operating system.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how high it can make the phone calls. Now, Fangman reported the hijacking and said that the hijackers were likely flying the plane. He also said that both pilots were dead and that a flight attendant was stabbed. Brian David Sweeney calls his wife and tells her that they may storm the cockpit. The 9/11 Commission estimates that the flight was hijacked, American Airlines Flight 77 hijacked between 8:51 and 8:54 a.m. Flight attendant Renee May and Barbara Olson make calls from this flight. Renee May uses her cell phone, while Olson calls once from an airphone and once from a cell. She called to collect once, and the other was a direct call. Renee May tells her mother that there were 6 hijackers on board, as opposed to the 9/11 Commission and the FBI, who states that there were only 5. The 9/11 Commission states that on Flight 93 began at 9:28 a.m., it is estimated. Leroy Homer, the flight's pilot, is heard by the FAA yelling "Mayday, Mayday" twice at 9:28 a.m. Ziad Jarrah is a suspected pilot and supposedly makes 2 announcements on board. This flight would have the most important calls made out of all 4 hijacked flights, and also have the most phone calls made as well. 10 passengers and 2 crew members were able to make calls. Tom Burnett, C.C. Lyles, Mark Bingham, Jeremy Glick, and Todd Beamer all state that the plane is hijacked by only 3 hijackers and not the 4, as the FBI and 9/11 Commission state. I'll get into that in a bit with Ziad Jarrah in your question and answer, Richard.
Okay.
Only 2 hijackers are in the cockpit, while only 1 is outside the door, but he's claiming to wear a bomb belt. Lauren Grancolis, Joseph DeLuca, Linda Groenland, Marion Britton, and flight attendant Sandra Bradshaw make calls. At 8:46 a.m., and by the way, they're all cell phone calls. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the northern facade of the North Tower, Tower 1. There are 92 fatalities on board, 1,600 fatalities from the North Tower. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashes nose first into the southern facade of the South Tower, Tower 2. There are 65 fatalities on board, 900 fatalities on the ground from the South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines crashes into the west side of the Pentagon. There are 64 fatalities on board, on the ground, with, I'm sorry, 65 fatalities on board and 125 fatalities on the ground. At 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashes near Indian Lake in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The plane crashes into a reclaimed strip mine known as the Diamond T mine, and they're owned by PBS Coals in Stony Creek Township, which is located in Somerset County. There are 44 fatalities on board that flight. Nobody dies on the ground. It's in an open field. The flight recordings for Flight 11 and 175 were supposedly never found. This is contradicted by two first responders who claimed that they recovered it and that the FBI collected it. Although this is a gray area. It's not really speculation. These are two people who claim to find it, but they claim, the FBI claims and 9/11 claims that they never find it, but take that with a grain of salt. The flight recorder for Flight 77 was found, but damaged to the point where nothing could be extracted from the flight data, although the flight data recorder yielded useful information. For Flight 93, investigators located the flight data recorder on September 13th and the cockpit voice recorder the following day. During the Zacharias Moussaoui trial in 2006, the cockpit voice audio was played for the victim families in a separate room. It's the only time that the audio was played. And in fact, I'm currently going to work on a Freedom of Information request regarding getting the audio. I'm going to be denied, I know it. But the transcript was released for public view, not the audio. Various pieces of aircraft debris was found within the records of the Pentagon on September 14th. Fairfax Urban County Urban Search and Rescue members Carlton Berkhammer, Brian Morovitz come across intact seats from the plane's cockpit. Navy Command Center Lieutenant Kevin Schaefer observed a chunk of the aircraft's nose cone, pieces of it, very few, and the landing gear in the service road between rings B and C. Investigators also found a part of Nawaf Al-Hasbi's driver's license in the north parking lot rubble pile, and human remains were taken to Dover Air Force Base mortuary in Delaware. Of the 5 victims, there is nothing left at all, including a 3-year-old girl named Dana Falkenberger. Out of the 5 children on Flight 77, disappeared without a trace. They were obliterated. Somerset County Coroner Wally Miller was involved in investigation and identifications of the human remains for Flight 93. Miller later found and identified approximately 1,500 pieces of human remains, no bigger than a piece of the backbone, totaling approximately 600 pounds of human remains. All the people on board the flights were identified by December 21st, Flight 93, of course. Numerous eyewitnesses also witnessed a plane impacting the World Trade Center, Pentagon, in Shanksville. All this, of course, is a point of contention for these fringe conspiracy theorists who claim no plane crashed anywhere at Pentagon in Shanksville, where many eyewitnesses personally saw and heard the plane crash into both these areas. Nevertheless, the debris recovered human remains as well as the plane's debris and human remains, as well as the eyewitnesses who plainly contradicted their narratives based on the fantastical. However, there are far more questions than there are answers to the investigations, including yours truly. 2 congressional committees were formed at the behest of the New Jersey widows, as they were called, families who lost loved ones in the World Trade Center attacks. And the 2 congressional inquiries, which are the 9/11 Commission and the Joint House Inquiry, were both created to collect information, but they were both hindered by their directors from placing blame on the intelligence committees. Philip Zelikow, the director of the 9/11 Commission, who was appointed by the State Department, with complaints from the Jersey widows and others that the investigation would be hindered, and they were right. They would be incomplete. All these investigations, both of them, would be incomplete and have a biased review of what really actually happened. The Joint House Inquiry, which was not as hindered as 9/11 Commission from Director Eleanor Hill, was not as strict. Nevertheless, co-chair Portegas and Bob Graham were also stammered from the lack of cooperation from the Central Intelligence Agency and NORAD. NORAD itself would give false timelines regarding their responses on intercept flights on 9/11, while the CIA director, George Tenet, would at times give false testimony, and he would commit perjury regarding cables, such as the cable not being read by anyone at Alex Station regarding Khalid al-Minar having a multi-entry visa into the United States, when 53 agents from the CIA had indeed read that cable and didn't notify anyone from the FBI inside the United States until that infamous principals meeting on August 21st of 2001, when it was much too late. At this date, no one was ever fired or subsequently blamed for the 9/11 attacks. No one from the CIA, the NSA, or the FBI. The Israeli Mossad agents that were seen celebrating attacks at Doric Towers, they were released back to Israel, along with a multitude of other Israeli spies posing as ardent students. Then you have the Saudi nationals, such as Omar al-Bayoumi, Omar Basnan, Fahad al-Thumeri. They all went back to Saudi Arabia. In fact, they were interviewed by the Denial Commission, and the interviews are completely redacted from public view. As for the Saudi national who was in the hotel room as the same flight 77 hijackers, Salah bin Abdul Rahman Hussein, the one I said was a prominent Saudi government official, he was questioned by the FBI shortly after the attacks. But he reportedly feigned a seizure during the interview and was taken to a nearby hospital where he was reported in perfect health. But, on September 19th, he was allowed to leave back to Saudi Arabia after FBI higher-ups told the agents to leave him alone. The infamous 28 pages, which was redacted, which is the redacted, or the joint inquiry, the House inquiry report, had been released with some redactions showing Saudi nationals Omar al-Bayoumi, Omar Basnan, as well as Fahad al-Thumeri, receiving numerous wire transfers from Haifa bint Faisal, who gave it to the wives of al-Bayoumi and Basnan. Who's Haifa bint Faisal? Well, she's the wife of U.S. Saudi ambassador and very close friend to the Bush family, Bandar bin Sultan. Another document, which was ignored by the two congressional inquiries, called the Shea Memo, a report drafted by Gerald Shea, a retired corporate lawyer. The report gives intricate and complete detail of who was following the Al-Qaeda operatives in Florida, in New Jersey, and in New York, and at which places. The number of Israeli agents, what they were involved in inside the United States is intricately detailed. This is a report that is not really publicly known. It's on my Facebook wall, but for anyone that wants to go directly to read the report, just type in Shea Memo PDF and you could download it for yourself. In the report, Shea quotes the following, quote, why the Israeli government decided not to share with us all the critical information that they had and the extent of that information is a subject for public inquiry. They may have thought some sort of warning prudent in the event their surveillance activities later became a matter of public knowledge. But any energetic Israeli effort to assist the United States in preventing the attacks would not have served their strategic interest, in view of the disastrous effect those attacks were likely to have on the relationships between the United States and the Arab world, end quote. The events that took place on 9/11 will always have a continual ripple effect, which will have a detrimental effect, not just on the Arab world, but to the entire world all over for all of time. While all of it coming at the hands of our own government and the intelligence agencies here and abroad, which were complicit in the attacks by allowing them to happen in the first place, for it served at the interests of agencies and individuals here and abroad.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much for listening. We actually went on at that point to talk about Ziad Jarrah, one of the sensible pilot of Flight 93. However, we've subsequently recorded a whole episode on that on the Darkened Hour, so I'll cut this interview there and direct you to that for further information. As I said at the start, that concludes the series proper. Do check out Adam's channel to keep up to date with what he's doing, and I'll publish some of the more general information stuff I do with him on my channel as well. So thank you for listening to everything we've done so far. It's been immensely informative and educational for me to go through this with Adam, to have that opportunity. And I hope that's come across and you've all gotten something from it too.